I think that might get some updates in March and in the summertime, but really, I think this is the time period to watch. What do you think, Hope?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that if you were to extrapolate what happened during the last Venus retrograde in Scorpio to the Venus retrograde in Scorpio that's going to happen this fall 2026, there could be another assassination attempt that occurs on Maduro or on Delcy Rodriguez or anyone in their administration. We could see Maduro attempting to undermine Delcy Rodriguez through loyalists to him, right, that are still holding positions in the government. We could see a stronger push from the US to take over Venezuelan oil and gas because that's what we saw in 2018 was Trump essentially trying to put a stronghold on Venezuela's economy.
Now, for a long time, the United States has worn this mask, right? Like ever since it was created, right? Like it represented itself to be this land of like freedom and equality and democracy and all of this. But really, it was just the same rapacious imperialistic impulse that had, kind of ruled the Western world since the Roman Empire. This impulse has mutated in various ways and had various different expressions. The English Empire was the empire before the American one. And, they say it's Pax Americana, but really America is an empirical force. And now that America is going through its Pluto return, which is, Pluto is a planet concerned with power and unseen forces and corruption, power dynamics, things like that. America's in the full force of its Pluto return right now. And we're seeing the mask come off, right? We're seeing the mask slip, right? And we're seeing, we're not even doing pretexts anymore. We don't have Colin Powell going to the UN, right? We don't have any kind of like pretense of coalition building. They're not even bothering to come up with a psyop for us, right? Which is really the most insulting part of all of this is that they didn't even bother to try to do a psyop to get people on board and manufacture consent. They're just like, no, we're going to cowboy this shit and go in and shut the electricity down and fuck shit up. And it's at least the only silver lining I can see in this situation is that at least now it is undeniable what the United States and the military industrial complex is. And, that they'll just come and take your shit if you cross them. Right. And, it's like world police, worldwide gang. Right. And, but I think that is coming unraveled here. And like, we're going to touch on this in this presentation, which is, the implications that this has for the American empire. So thank you for indulging my little monologue rant there. I just wanted to get that out. So let's start. And but first, to prove my point, right? To prove my point, I just want to show one thing, right? Here we go.
A tweet by the White House, by the way. We can't hear it, by the way, Alex, just letting you know. But
they can't hear it?
Hopefully the viewers understand the implications of what we're showing.
Oh, yeah, they can't hear it. Dang. I'm
not sure. We can explain what it is, right?
Yeah, so I'm sure you guys, so basically in this video, what happens is this is a clip from August of 2025 where Maduro is basically saying, all right, come and get me. All right. I'll be here in Miraflores, if you want me, come capture me. And then Marco Rubio is saying a line from a Biggie Smalls song, Notorious B.I.G. song Juicy. He says, if you don't know, now you know. And then they show Maduro captured and Trump walking swagger, and they cut the clip so that the N-word is playing while Trump is doing this swagger walk, and it's just like you could not. And then the White House as they're, you know, it's just this is clown world, guys. This is clown world. This is what America really is. Like, like when you are a kid, right, and you're going around and you go into the woods or like some kind of forested area, and you see a stone, rock, big rock, and you pull it up, and then there's all these like bugs
Yeah,
and like
worm.
worming around, wiggling around, right?
Yeah.
They're exposed to the sunlight and they start wriggling. So, um, this is Donald Trump is basically lifting up the rock on America so that we can all see like what it really is. And someone says insane meme ops. I mean, I have to agree. The fact that like all these politicians are now embracing like meme warfare as a political strategy is I mean, it's crazy. And
It's
Trump
our
is the master of
propaganda.
that. Trump did meme himself into the White House,
It's modern day propaganda, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're adapting, right? So, this is case in point. Like, in case you had any doubt, right, that, there was going to be some kind of like legitimate pretense here. Like, we're doing away even with the pretense of justice or equality or anything like that. We're doing away even with the pretense of it. And this is a significant step because this is no longer America pretending, okay, we've got this moral authority. We support all of these values, right? Now it's just, okay, it's naked self-interest, right? And so you do not have that. We do not have the high ground anymore,
Mhm.
basically. Um, and that high ground was always a carefully constructed propaganda piece, right? But what I'm saying is that we don't even have the pretense of it. They're like saying, we don't even need that anymore. You guys are so stupid that, and you won't stop us, that we can just do what we want now,
Yeah.
basically. That's the message here. So with that, let's get started with the presentation. So
Lucas Sigardi 8764 says, cheers from Europe. You USA citizens are so lucky. We would like Trump over here. Or at least we would like that he did to our governors what he did to Maduro.
Well, so the thing is that this. I mean, I'm sorry. I know you like the show, and you're commenting, but I just have to totally disagree with this because what's going to happen with Trump is the things he's doing, the eroding the rule of law and the courts and all this. It's going to cause a backlash, and there's going to be a reactionary movement against Trump, and that is going to be used as an excuse to make the United States like a lot of the things that the EU citizens would complain about the overreach of the government. A lot of that stuff, I think that it's going to come here. Like it's like Trump is being used as like a cudgel, right? It's like it's the Trump creates this crisis, and that is always convenient for people that are looking to seize power, right? Anyone that already has power and is looking to seize more of it, they create crises, right? And Trump is a crisis. Trump is like so many crises walking together. And the things that are happening with the court system, the way the rule of law is being eroded, um, pretty soon, I mean, who knows what could happen? They could just a lot of the laws that were supposed to be enforced by the federal government, they're just no longer enforcing them. They're no longer doing anything like that. Um, and so I think Trump's a destabilizing force. And if you're afraid of like the New World Order and all of that, which like, yeah, that's real, but like that Trump is ushering that in and he's doing it. He's the wrecking ball that comes through. And then the solution is what they offer. So I don't know, just don't don't drink the Trump Kool-Aid just yet. I think um, you know, just wait and see what happens. Okay, so Hope, I've been yammering on. How should we start this presentation? I mean,
Well,
obviously we start with the capture, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So, just a quick overview. On January 3rd, which was just a few days ago, the US essentially raided Venezuela. They went in, bombed Venezuela, captured Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And the US says that now they're running Venezuela. So, this this is actually happening within the context of a bit of history here. There has always been tense relations between Venezuela and the US. The United States had imposed economic sanctions onto Venezuela during the George W. Bush administration. And I think that that context is important to just say from the front, because the technique that we're about to show you is going to really highlight how the context around the relationship shows up as a really big indicator as to why this happens and how it happened. Um, and we see here on the, we have a screenshot of the news article that broke out on the day of. And to the left, we have a composite chart between Trump and Maduro in the inner wheel. And then on the outside, we have the transit, the event on the outer wheel.
Yes, yes. So just to clarify what we're doing here, we've got Trump and Maduro with the composite chart. So this is a chart that you can do where you basically create one chart out of two people's charts by calculating the midpoints of each planet. So you look at like where this one person's sun is, where the other person's sun is, and find the point on the zodiac that's in the middle of those two. And that becomes the composite sun. So these charts are very accurate when it comes to transits and can show developments of relationships and stuff. And I like to use these composite charts in a lot of different ways. The outer wheel, yeah, is the full moon. Now, this is for the exact moment the raid happened, that the news at least reports the moment that the raid happened, 4:21 a.m. Eastern time. We see the moon is very close to being perfectly full. It's like an hour away from the full moon being exact. So, what happens, what the technique that we're going to demonstrate is, what it requires you to do is it requires you, when you're looking at an event, you want to find the nearest quarter lunation. So it's either new moon, waxing quarter moon, full moon, waning quarter moon. You take the event and then you find the nearest one of those. Okay. So that's step one with this technique. So
by the way, it's the 9-month lunar cycle that we're going to be using in our showcasing of events. And we're going to begin with January 3rd. And just to go back to that chart, as Yuzuru Gold points out, the full moon is exactly on their composite ascendant.
Yes, and North Node.
It's like a degree away, maybe. And their ascendant is conjunct Rahu. So the full moon is happening exactly on the ascendant of the composite chart. This is obviously a really, really big deal in the development of their relationship. And not only that, but that Venus Mars Cazimi is right on their descendant in K2 as well. So we're going to use this as our starting point of the 9-month lunar cycle technique that Alex has just outlined, and go back in time.
Yes. So the other thing I want to comment about before we do that is that there's been some dispute over Maduro's birth time and birthplace, and he gives a birth time of 5 p.m. and says that's from his mother. So that's the time I used, even though there's different times on other websites. And I don't know, I think that such a significant event happening, because in order for this ascendant to be here, we have to consider both Trump's ascendant and Maduro's ascendant. So the fact that this is full moons happening on the angles of the chart, I think means that Maduro's chart might actually be right? The one he said might actually be real. Yeah. So it's one piece of information in support of that supposition.
Yes.
It doesn't prove it, but yeah.
Yeah. So we're going following this Cancer moon, okay? Cancer
Yes.
moon at around 12 degrees, and that's how we're going to go back in time to showcase this 9 month lunar technique and show
Yes.
how the 9 month lunar cycle technique can actually be applied to like a variety of situations. You can apply this to see like major events that occur in a relationship you might have with someone, or major events that occur in your career. I, for one, have used it to be able to track like major turning points in my own career, and I know that Alex uses it as well in his own practice. And yeah,
Yes.
it's by an astrologer by the name of Dietrich Pessin. Did I say that correct?
I think so. It's a German woman, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And this is her book is called Lunar Shadows 3. You can get it on Amazon. It's a great book, and this technique is really strong, and we're going to demonstrate just how strong it is.
Yeah.
So,
And oh, by the way, just to go back, we are going to be showcasing so the following techniques that we're going to showcase, just so that everyone knows from the outset, is the composite chart, as Alex has just explained, the 9 month lunar cycle, eclipse transits, the Venus star point cycle, which is going to be really, really interesting. And if we have some time, we're going to go through progressions. And there are some other secret techniques that we've used that we can't talk about publicly, but for us to come to the conclusion that we did. But the most important ones really is a 9 month lunar cycle, the composite.
yeah. The 9 month lunar cycle is honestly, it's like goated. It's so good. It's so fire. Honestly, like this woman deserves to be up there with some of the great astrologers that I mentioned for coming up with this discovery. Uh, all of the shout out and kudos to her if possible.
Yes.
So yeah, let's explain. I'm going to explain how this technique works. So the conceit of this technique is that every 9 months there is a different quarter lunar cycle around the same degree of the zodiac. So if there is, like we used in this other example, a full moon here at the middle degrees of Cancer, 13 degrees of Cancer, then 9 months before that, there would have been a waxing quarter moon at the same degree. And then 9 months before that, there will be a new moon at the same degree, right? So let's go back in time and we see 9 months before was April 4th, 2025. And we see the moon is here in Cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and the sun is in Aries. So it's a waxing quarter moon,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we would expect, if this technique works, we would expect that the events that occurred on January 3rd, 2026, there would be buildup to them
Yes.
on this day, right? And so, Hope, do you want to tell everyone what was going on around April 4th, 2025?
Yes. Yes. And by the way, you zero gold. Yes, it is a whole baby. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, you're right. Um,
Yes. Yeah. I've been calling it the lunar gestational cycle because of the 9 month thing. It's
yeah.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so talking about the events of April 4th, 2025, 9 months prior to the kidnapping and the raid of Venezuela, Maduro declares a state of economic emergency. This was following essentially the US increasing their tariffs on Venezuela to 15%. And on top of that, adding a 25% sanction on any other country that purchased Venezuela's crude oil and gas. So, yeah, we could see this as a build-up event, right? Like a foreshadowing of the raid that did end up occurring. It really is an echo and a echo of U.S. overwhelming Venezuela by imposing its power upon it.
Yes, exactly right. Someone says, was the fact that the kidnapping happened during a full moon night an indication that the operation was agreed on by both sides? No attacker looking for secrecy would choose a full moon night. We're going to get to that. Yeah, there is I think there's some sus details with this whole thing, then we're going to go down that rabbit hole.
Mhm.
Now, Another thing that was going on is that Trump was making, very aggressive statements as well at this time. So, we see, these sanctions are like soft power, right? So this is something that you can do short of physical violence to exert power is things like sanctions. And then you also have like saber rattling where you just make threats basically. And Trump was doing both around this time. He was imposing sanctions and saber rattling, making these Trumpian statements of, well, maybe we'd like to see regime change in Venezuela, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
because that was like a really big pretense for the sanctions and the tariffs is that Trump was essentially like trying to like publicly put pressure on Maduro and his regime to essentially achieve a democratic and prosperous Venezuela, which is really, really, really American of us to try to essentially like before like taking over a country being like, hey, we just want you to be democratic, we just want you to be fair. And that's what Trump says. Trump says that what he wants is for Venezuela to be democratic and that they would no longer pose any security threat to them or any economic threat to them if only they were to be democratic and fair. So
Yeah, yeah. And
he,
we know this is a lie.
yeah. Mhm.
This is a blatant lie. The United States doesn't care what system of government you have as long as you open up your country for resource pillaging, right? And let them rob the resources that belong to your native people and sell out your countrymen. That's all the United States cares about. Moving forward, so if we
Moving
go back
backward.
nine, yeah, backwards,
Mhm.
actually. Yeah, good catch. So 9 months before this date, we would expect a new moon in Cancer, right? So we go back 9 months, and here it is. We have on the transit chart on the outside, the new moon in Cancer at like approximately the same degree. It's all been 13, 15 degrees,
Mhm.
13, 14, 15 degrees. Now, as you go back in time, these numbers do shift. And so if you go back years and years and years, you'll see that these lunar cycles do move backwards a few degrees, right? And eventually they'll start happening in other signs if you go back far enough. And so the technique does seem to be some sign drift with the pattern, right? So that's something that's not totally sorted out yet. Now, another thing to keep in mind is what we've got here on the screen. The inner wheel of the chart is the composite between Biden and Maduro. So, because at this time in July 2024, Biden was the president, I decided to go with the composite between Biden and Maduro. And here we see that the composite Uranus is here at 18 degrees. I wish you guys could see my cursor, but I don't think you can. At 18 degrees Cancer, we see that the new moon is conjunct the composite Uranus. And this was very unexpected, right?
Yes.
These announcements of peace talks, because we have this announcement that the United States is going to restart peace talks. They're going to see if the elections can be made more fair, right? And this is something that people were not expecting because the United States and Venezuela have been at our odds for decades, right? And is there anything you want to add about the events?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So essentially, the United States had submitted a proposal to Venezuela saying, hey, like, why don't we restart our negotiations on the economic sanctions that we've put on you in exchange, like, make your electoral process fair. So 9 months prior to Venezuela announcing its economic emergency, so that's during the waxing lunar phase, right? So on the new moon, there was a virtual meeting that took place between the Venezuelan officials and the US officials to, again, have this negotiation. And it was all under, they were essentially following the outline of what is called the Barbados Agreement, which we're going to come back to really soon. And they had this like conversation, but nothing really came out of it. There was no immediate agreement on any economic sanctions being lifted, and Venezuela had no specific electoral concessions that they had announced following this conversation. So they had this like unexpected renegotiation of terms, but nothing actually really came out of it. But this was a really big deal at the time.
Yes, yes, it was, and it was made headlines, and we know that the Venezuelan elections did not turn out. I don't think they really followed this protocol. But the thing is, this Barbados protocol that is Venezuela signing on to this is what prompted the United States to re-engage diplomatically with them. When was that created? Well, it
9 months before. Like almost exactly, literally 9 months before this negotiation, they fucking signed this Barbados agreement. So it wasn't the United States signing this with Venezuela, but it was Maduro's administration signing the Barbados agreement with their opposition coalition in Venezuela. So the Barbados deal was essentially an agreement for the 2024 elections to be fair. They were trying
yeah.
to establish a fair process so that other
It would
candidates.
be hard to rig for Maduro, right?
Exactly. So
That's
it wasn't rigged for Maduro to win. Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
So if we take this technique and now go forwards in time, we see okay, there's the waning quarter moon in Cancer, right? And Venezuela is signing a deal where they're agreeing to implement reforms so that their elections can be fair, right? 9 months later, the United States decides to take them seriously and be like, okay, well, if you're going to make your elections more fair, I guess we can talk to you,
Mhm.
right? Then the 2024 elections happen, and there's all kinds of rigging, all kinds of corruption with that, right? And that's in the in between time. And then so 9 months after the meeting, we get the sanctions being imposed, right? It's
Mhm.
like, all right, well,
Well, the
you know,
tariffs.
yeah, the tariffs. And then we're also sanctioning other countries and being like, anyone that buys Venezuelan oil, we're going to attempt to impose penalties on, right? And then 9 months after that, Maduro is captured by Trump. So and all of these line up to quarter lunations on in the middle of Cancer,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So
astounding.
yeah, it's pretty crazy, guys, right? Like, is anyone in the chat here is like anyone having a mind blown moment?
We did. We were freaking out and screaming when we found this out. um okay, so maybe we can go back to
Yeah, let's go back to all right. So this is what happened, right? This was the chart.
this is the
Now,
start for the raid, yeah, the kidnapping.
yeah, now if we want to know what's going to happen, right, we can look 9 months ahead, right? But first, we want to examine the intervening time between them to see if there's, any kind of activity that's going to activate the composite chart between Maduro and Trump,
Yes.
right? So the upcoming lunar eclipse is here on March 3rd, right?
Mhm.
So what's the first thing what you wanted to do explain this one? Go
Sure,
ahead.
sure. So there is a lunar eclipse that is occurring on March 3rd at 12 to 13 degrees of Virgo. Where is their composite sun? At 12 degrees of Virgo. This lunar eclipse is going to be big. So, like eclipses, we all know that eclipses are major turning points in everyone's lives and on the international global front as well. And their lunar eclipses are tend to be more outward manifestation, like things actually happening, whereas a solar eclipse is much more internal. And there is a lunar eclipse happening at 12 degrees of Virgo. And so we can take this to be that this is going to be some sort of major event that happens in these events that are occurring right now. And what else do we see? What else do we see in this transit chart? So Maduro and Trump's composite moon is at 22 degrees of Scorpio, and it's going to be transiting Pisces Mercury and Pisces Venus. So a really big part of this lunar eclipse that's going to occur is that it's going to involve a retrograde Mercury and Venus. Those two planets are quite close to the sun. So is Mars, and we're going to get to Mars in a second. But Venus and Mercury are going to play a large role. Generally, when Venus and Mercury are involved with each other, it could indicate like an agreement, a negotiation, trying to come to terms. And the composite moon, so Trump and Maduro's composite moon is in a trine, the most harmonious aspect that exists with Venus and Mercury. And
Yes.
the other thing to note here is that Venus is at phases. So Venus is about 15 degrees away from the sun, which means that Venus is shining really bright in the sky. And the ancient astrologers took the phases condition of a planet to mean that that planet is really strong. And not only is Venus at phases, but it's also in Pisces, which means that Venus is exalted. So this seems to support peace talks and negotiations. However, Mars, if you look here, is at 1 degree of Pisces. So it just switched signs from Aquarius into Pisces. And when a planet is switching signs, it's in Jyotish, it's considered to be a Sandhi condition, which makes a planet more unstable, more disorderly. And with Mars being in the Sandhi condition, I think that whatever agreement is achieved will still be on shaky ground, especially because this is going to be following a Mars Uranus square that's going to aspect both Maduro and Trump's composite Mars here.
And composite Pluto as well.
And composite
Right
Pluto,
there,
yeah.
composite Pluto. So, yeah, to add on to what Hope was saying about the negotiations being like shaky, the thing is, Mercury stationed retrograde a couple of days before this at like 21 or 22 degrees Pisces, and then as station retrograde is going back and is now invisible, it's under the beams of the sun. When it stations direct, Mercury stations direct a few weeks later, it's going to be conjunct Mars. And Mercury and Mars is, they say it's lying and cheating and all kinds of bad things. And so I think that there could be like a backroom deal here that was said, like it's presented as one thing, but it's really something else. And we're going to get to that. Someone asked, what about the Vice President Rodriguez? We are getting to her very soon because we're going to get into the conspiracy kind of theories with this very soon. Now, another thing.
Just to add on to that Mercury Mars conjunction could also signify a breaking of agreements, right? Whatever agreement is met, it will be broken. So that's another possibility as well.
Yes, but it can also be like a like it can signify that the like the arrangement is of a bad nature, right? Like, so if there is an agreement made, it's going to be nefarious in some way, right? Or dishonest in some way,
yeah,
and not what it appears to be, presented as something else,
right? So
yeah.
Hidden.
So here's the conspiracy theory slide, everyone. All right, so what do we have? So now, at the time, on January 3rd at 12:43 p.m. Eastern time, this is just over 8 hours after the attack on Venezuela, the vice president was already in Russia. Yeah, and Fox News reports this 8 hours after. Now, this Delcy Rodriguez, she's been involved in her own corruption scandals, right? And if there's anything that the United States loves, if you're a socialist, the United States loves it if you're a corrupt one, right? Because then they can work with you. So now Trump's making all these demands to expel Delcy Rodriguez and for Delcy Rodriguez to basically open up the oil for Western interests. Now here's the conspiracy theory. So basically, the idea is that the unipolar world of the United States empire is coming to an end, right? The two other major powers are China and Russia. And China and Russia are both ruled by authoritarians, and Trump is a wannabe authoritarian. And so the idea is that maybe that we'll just carve up the world and just split it up, right? And we can each have our own little fiefdoms, right? So agreement, I think that there was an agreement reached before they even went in, to take Maduro. I think there was some kind of arrangement made
Backdoor.
with Russia, right? Because Russia and China is supposed to protect Maduro, so they don't want to lose face, right? I don't think Maduro's going to die. I don't think Trump's going to do anything bad to him. I think he's going to be transferred over to Russia or something like this. Now, this is something that at the time that it was being reported about Trump being controlled by the Russians, Russian asset, all of this. I was skeptical of it, if for no other reason that the biggest outlet pushing the story was like CNN. But it does turn out like the liberals were right all along. Trump is a Russian asset, basically. Trump is he's done some backroom deal, I think, with Putin in order so they can both expand their interests where they want. I think, and then we have President Xi from China just clowning on Trump and all of this. I think that this is all at play so that these three powers can kind of, carve up the world. It's like when in the 19th century, when Europe decided, okay, let's carve up Africa and we can each have a bit of it, right? Except it's different because it's not just Europe and Africa, it's the whole world, right? And like they're kind of splitting the world into these sectors, right? In the United States, we're gonna have our little fiefdom here, Greenland and Venezuela. Those will be our acquisitions. China will have their own acquisitions that they want. Everyone knows the territory that all these countries want. Russia wants to go into Ukraine. China wants Hong Kong, Taiwan, Nepal, all of this stuff. So, it's that's what I think is going on here personally. That's my speculation. Now, I say predictions here. This is predictions in quotes. These are possible themes that I expect to come up. Now, when do I think all of this stuff is going to happen? I'm not saying all this is going to happen on that lunar eclipse, right? I think it may take some more time to develop. And I think that we need to look in the future to see when these themes could come up, right? And so, what's the time period in the immediate future that is the most likely for Maduro to be involved in some kind of geopolitical intrigue, right? Like, that's the question we need to answer now, right? It's like, so if we think that there is some kind of conspiracy, some kind of deal done with Maduro, when is that transaction going to take place? That's the big question. Sorry, I know I kind of talked through that whole slide, but is there anything you wanted to add, Hope?
No, I'm excited to get into the next part because it is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So,
all right. Yeah. So the raid happened on January 3rd, 2026. So let's apply the lunar this lunar gestational cycle. Okay. What's 9 months after January 3rd, 2026? Get the next slide. October 3rd, 2026, when the Venus retrograde in Scorpio begins. Why is that so crazy?
Well, it's so crazy because Maduro has a Venus retrograde in Scorpio in his natal chart.
Ding, 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 ding.
We
Yes.
skipped this part about Maduro's natal chart, but we didn't read his natal chart. We went right to the composite. We were going to comment on Maduro's chart. Maybe we can do that later. But yeah, so it just so happens that the Venus retrograde, which is a transit he has in his natal chart, Venus retrograde in Scorpio, that happens 9 months away from the January 3rd, 2026 date. Now, before we go forward, I want to respond to a couple people in the chat. It says, Putin and Trump are certainly collaborating, but it's not like Trump is a Russian asset. He represents a strong current in the USA productive classes. I think that Trump is a pawn of the kind of like old school aerospace industrial like the intelligence agencies, right? Like the same people that did Project Paperclip and all that and killed Kennedy, right? These are the same people supporting Trump now, right? So if we're going into deep like conspiracy realms, that's what I think, right? Trump represents that faction in America, right? And that's opposed to like big tech. And Wall Street used to be aligned with the aerospace and the intelligence agencies, but now they're getting more aligned with big tech. That's been the big shift over the last 20 years. What else? Who says, talking about whether Trump's a Russian asset or pawn. I mean, I think that Trump is so deferential to Russia, and I've seen it over and over and over for years now. I don't think there's any denying it at this point that they have Trump over a barrel on something. They've got some kind of dirt on him. He's way too obsequious. Trump drives a hard bargain and pushes people and gets the most he can out of people. Everyone else except Russia, right? He drives a hard bargain with, and with Russia, he just bends over, right? So I don't know. I was reluctant to accept this conclusion, but it does sadly appear to be the case. Okay. Let's go back to the 9 months. So the thing is that because this next activation of this 9 month cycle pattern we're showing happens right when there's a Venus retrograde, that's important because Maduro has Venus retrograde in his chart natally.
So it's a
Right?
recurrence transit for him.
Yeah, it's a recurrence transit. This Venus retrograde is happening now. There's a thing called the Venus star point, right? So the Venus star point, every 8 years, there will be a Venus retrograde in approximately the same part of the zodiac. So just like we were using these quarter moon phases that occur at the same part of the zodiac, we can also track the Venus retrogrades and how they occur in different sectors of the zodiac. And so the last time that Venus was retrograde in Scorpio was in the fall of 2018, right? And what was going on around there? Hope, tell us.
Yeah. Okay. So during the last Venus retrograde in Scorpio, which was between October to November, and I'm excluding the pre shadow and the post shadow here. Okay. So October 8th, 2018, 3 days after Venus stations retrograde, Fernando Alban dies after falling from the 10th floor of the intelligence agency headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. Who is Fernando Alban? Fernando Alban is a critic of Maduro and a councilman in the opposition side. So the Venezuelan government under Maduro claims that this is a suicide, but everyone else obviously knew it was a murder. There were protests on the streets. It was a really big deal. And like a little less than a week later, Maduro accuses Trump of plotting to assassinate him. So there's themes of assassinations happening here in the Venus retrograde of Scorpio.
Yes.
About
Political intrigue, all kinds of crazy drama.
Political intrigue, political drama. And a little less than a month later, Trump signs an executive order that prohibits US people from buying Venezuelan gold or involving themselves in any sort of transactions that has to do with Venezuelan gold. And this is obviously, with the incentive of depriving Maduro's government of their revenue. And then in November 26th, this is like the most, like, this is the craziest part. So November 26th, 2018, in the post-shadow period, Maduro appears at the closing ceremony of this international tourism fair that was happening in Caracas in Venezuela. He goes in and he's promoting the potential that Venezuela has in their tourism. And on the very same day, the UN announces the release of $9.2 million in an emergency aid in Venezuela. So themes of political intrigue, themes of deception, themes of, this, it's all echoing everything that's been happening, right, in the 9 month gestational cycles that we've seen, but all jam packed in these 2 months.
Yes. So another thing to note is that so I think that we'll see a hit around the lunar eclipse. I think that will be eventful for this story. The next period of eventfulness that I think will happen could be at the 4.5 month mark. So with this 9 month cycle, you can also look at the midpoint between the two dates that you get, right? And so that for this, the midpoint would be in the summertime, right? In end of June, beginning of July, right? So those are like the points to watch. Now, there's also the eclipse in August. So this could be an ongoing story. There's like multiple points where things are hitting. But if I was a betting man and I was putting my money on when the craziest events would happen and when the most decisive events would happen, I would say that the Venus retrograde in the fall is the time period to watch because uh, just looking at what happened last time, those themes circle back again. And if we go back to the Venus retrograde, the 8 years before this in 2010, at that time, Maduro was in the foreign affairs office in Venezuela and was involved in doing a lot of like political negotiations and maneuvering then. There's not a lot of information available on his activities then, but we can assume he was also involved heavily in negotiations around that time because in 2012, Venezuela, or 2010, Venezuela was trying to revamp their foreign relations and extend and make friends, right? So he was involved in that. So these Venus retrograde periods seem to be him making deals, making agreements with people, right? And also engaging in illegal and dangerous activity, right? So that fits his whole situation now. So I think that might get some updates in March and in the summertime, but really I think this is the time period to watch. What do you think, Hope?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that if you were to extrapolate what happened during the last Venus retrograde in Scorpio to the Venus retrograde in Scorpio that's going to happen this fall, 2026, there could be another assassination attempt that occurs on Maduro or on Delcy Rodriguez or anyone in their administration. We could see Maduro attempting to undermine Delcy Rodriguez through loyalists to him, right, that are still holding positions in the government. We could see a stronger push from the US to take over Venezuelan oil and gas because that's what we saw in 2018 was Trump essentially trying to put a stronghold on Venezuela's economy. So I think that we're going to see again, like you said, decisive events over essentially trying to what is that, strong man,
Strong arm,
strong
strong
arm,
arm. You're thinking of strong arm.
yes, yeah, strong arm Venezuela's economy, um uh making very nefarious actions towards Maduro or Delcy Rodriguez, um and trying to make it seem like everything's okay, right? Because Maduro essentially went on the international stage trying to promote Venezuela, but on the very same day, the UN released $9 million in foreign aid to Venezuela. So we can see, I think we'll be able to see a recurrence of those themes coming up in the fall.
Yeah, I agree with that. Um, what else? Oh yeah, this is just, oh yeah, Maduro's natal chart. Um, now with what else do we have here? All right, so basically, um, another thing to mention here is that I went and looked at Maduro's chart for next year, 2027, and I saw a bunch of Jupiter activations. Jupiter is getting activated on basically every level for Maduro next year in 2027 on his secondary progress chart, tertiary progress chart, Mahadasha. Is like all the timing techniques are pointing to Jupiter being very prominent for him next year. And we know, Jupiter, so because it's Jupiter, Jupiter is sometimes associated with people passing on and
Mhm.
dying. Jupiter can also be other types of good fortune. So I think things are going to be either really awesome or completely terrible for Maduro. And the time period to watch for him is June and July 2027. That pocket of time could be critical for Maduro. And if he is assassinated, I don't think it's going to be by the United States. Maybe the Israelis, maybe somebody else. I don't know. Maybe his own people. Who knows who it could be? But yeah, so that's my speculation. That's my tentative speculation. You can call it prediction if you want, but this is the where I see this story playing out. Yeah. Um, is there anything that you wanted to say about this, Hope? Otherwise, I'm gonna turn on. Or go ahead.
Oh no, I don't have anything more to say about this. Just that I agree with you. I think that 2027 is really the year in which Maduro could get assassinated or essentially run free, and be able to escape from all of these attacks that he is receiving right now. We saw his progression charts. We've seen his Mahadasha. He goes into a bad Tara, I think, at the end of 2026. And in 2027, there is, uh, a lot of Jupiter activations for him. And Jupiter, as we've seen in our own personal lives, does seem to signify death. And it makes sense, right? It's like Daddy Jupiter is coming here to take you back home,
Yeah,
essentially.